again, Year 6, Miss Owen here for another topic session. Today we're going to be looking at the gods and the role of religion. So a little bit of history mixed in with a bit of RE here today. And we're going to be looking at the importance of religion in ancient Egypt and why it was such a big part of their daily life. So our learning powers for today are absorption, because you're going to be taking on a little bit of information about each of the gods that we're going to look at today, and reasoning, understanding why religion is so important. If you want to pause the video now, write in today's date and title. Okay, so we started introducing this to you a little bit last lesson, where we were looking at those three significant aspects that when we look at a civilization, we can break it down into that religious and cultural and political aspect. So today we're going to be looking at the religious and the cultural aspect of ancient Egypt, because obviously the religion is part of the gods, but the cultural aspect comes into it because the gods were part of their daily life. The ancient Egyptians often spent parts of their day worshipping the gods, because they believed that the gods had to be obeyed in order for them to be able to go to the afterlife. Okay, let's do a little bit of total recall. One lesson ago, what year did Howard Carter discover the tomb of King Tut? 2 lessons ago, how many pyramids are there at Giza? And within this topic at some point, why were hieroglyphics so important? You want to pause the video now and answer those 3. Okay, so the year that Howard Carter discovered Tutankhamun's tomb, it was 1922. How many pyramids are there at Giza? There are 3. And why were hieroglyphics so important? Well, they were considered holy writing. They were very important because they sort of showed the story of ancient Egypt. They used them for rituals, writing spells on tombs. They used them to keep track of their crops and their animals, and they used them during battles. Very, very important. And also, obviously, the scribes were very important, the ones that wrote them down. Okay, so like I said, we're going to be looking at the gods today. Now, this is a really small selection of the gods that we're going to be looking at. The ancient Egyptians actually believed in over 2,000 gods and goddesses, but we're only obviously going to be looking at a small segment. We can't look at all of those, but we're going to be looking at those key ones that come up a lot, because what they believed were that the gods were like the natural elements in the world, so like the moon, the sun, the river Nile, the rain, those natural things that happened in the world. They believed that they were caused by the gods, and the gods were actually those things, and that's why they were so important to them, because without the river Nile they couldn't survive, without the sun the crops couldn't grow, without the rain you didn't have the soil, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so the importance of religion in ancient Egypt. Let's talk about this first before we actually look at who were some of the gods. And I know making links isn't necessarily one of our learning powers for today, but I wanted to make those links to what we've talked about previously when it comes to daily life, because you can see here the bit in bold, the worship of the gods and goddesses was part of everyday life. Okay, they would often have shrines for the gods in their houses that they would worship with. They would go to the temples to worship, make sacrifices, or give the gods gifts. It was part of their daily life. And we're going to understand why now and why religion was so important. That's where the reasoning comes in. So religion was very different for the ancient Egyptians, and they worshipped a range of gods and goddesses, and this is known as Polytheism. I think I'm saying that right, where you believe in more than one god. They believed that the gods were representatives of the natural forces, including the sun, the moon, and the river Nile, like I said. In addition, the gods had both human and animal features. If I go back to this one here, you can see that some of the gods, most of the gods, have both animal and human features to them, sort of setting them apart from human beings, essentially. And like I said, the worship of gods and goddesses was part of everyday life for them. They thanked them for allowing them to live another day. They thanked them for the day they had. They thanked them for the water of the river Nile. It was all those kinds of things happening on a daily occurrence. People interpreted everything as an act of the gods, and because they believed in life after death, the gods would judge them, so they had to be obeyed. They believed that the gods would judge them when they died, and if they'd led a good life and obeyed the gods gods that they could go on to the afterlife, and if they hadn't, they wouldn't be able to, and their soul would sort of drift. So, or their spirit would drift. So it was really important to them that the gods believed they had been that they obeyed all their life. The Egyptian people thought that the afterlife was similar to life on earth, only better. They thought that the spirits of the dead could eat, drink, and move around after death, and their spirit only needed a body to live in. This is why mummies were an integral part of religious ritual in ancient Egypt. So they believed that by sort of preserving the body, that spirit could potentially return to it if it's necessary. There were lots of temples in Egypt, which really enforces the importance of religions. Whole cities of temples arose, and these complexes were of real significance. So temples and structures the size of cities were built to worship the gods, and that shows how important they were to the ancient Egyptians. The priests were acting on behalf of the pharaoh, who implemented the will of gods on earth, and he was considered a living god, and was often seen as like face to face with the gods, that he was the god's representative on earth, and if he had to be obeyed as well as the gods. So here are just a few images. So this one here, this temple, like we were just talking about, these huge temples that were built. I believe this one was to worship Isis. Were built so people could go there and make sacrifices and worship the gods. You've got these amazing paintings and sculptures that were built for the gods. The Egyptians often wore jewelry, and that jewelry would have a representation of a god that they particularly worshipped. So certain people might have worshipped Isis over Osiris. It just depends on the person. And this is sort of replica of one of those shrines that would have been in people's homes that they would have used to worship the gods. Okay, so what I'm going to get you to do now is to have a little look at this information sheet on all of the different types of gods. Okay, there is so there's a link down here, and I'm going to show you that in a second, but it is to a website that's going to give you lots of information about the gods on top of the information I'm going to give you. But basically your activity is to determine, depending on what challenge you're going to do, whether it's bronze, silver or gold, which gods you believe to be the most important, and you're going to gather up information about them. You're going to try and attempt to draw a picture of them. And then if you're on gold as well, you're also going to be writing a paragraph on the importance of religion. So going back to that slide I just showed you about all the important things about religion, the fact that they built those temples to celebrate the gods, the fact that there was over 2,000 of them, and if the gods weren't obeyed, they didn't get to go to the afterlife, all that kind of thing, and the fact that it was part of their daily life as well. Okay, so if I just show you this website quickly. And you have been sent this link as well along with this lesson, so I would suggest you go and have a little look at it. But Duxters, it's quite a useful website. But basically, it's got the major gods and goddesses, and it's got all of their names and who they were, and potentially what they were worshipped for. A little bit about the temples. So this one here is a lovely temple. So it's Luxor Temple, and all about the pharaoh and the afterlife. There's a little quiz that you can take if you want to, but the main use of this website here is for the information about the gods. Okay, so that gives you a little bit of extra information, as well as this sheet here. Okay, so if I just make it a little bit bigger so we can see. So Egyptian gods and goddesses. So it gives you a little bit of insight into them. So like I said, there was over 2,000 gods and goddesses. And these ones here are ones that they were considered quite important. So you've got Ra, Amun. Obviously you can pause this video whenever you need to. Horus, Thoth, or Thoth, Mat, Isis, Osiris, Hathor, Anubis, and Sekhmet. So these are just 10 of the key gods that were worshipped, and these are just some of the images to go along with them. Okay, and you can really see clearly that they have both animal and human features. And what I'll do is I will zoom back out again so that you can see it's a bit clearer. Okay, so these are the gods, and obviously the numbers next to them correlate with the images. Okay, so number 5 over here, that's mapped there. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to use this information on this sheet, as well as maybe using the information that you get from that website, to either gather information about one god if you're doing bronze, gather information about 3 gods if you're doing silver, and gather information if you're doing gold for 4 gods. Okay, draw a picture, who they were, what they were worshipped for, and why you think they were important. Okay, so I'm just going to show you an example now. So this one here, this is bronze. I had a go at drawing it out myself. I obviously didn't do the drawing of the god. I'm going to leave that to you. I've just put the box there to show you what you would need to include. Okay, so the name of the god, what they were god of, maybe do a little bit of a description about them, and why they were worshipped. Okay, so every god would have had a different reason to be worshipped for. And this is silver, again, drawing of the gods, name, god of, why are they important? Okay, so why is this god important? What were they worshipped for? What were they worshipped for? What were they worshipped for? Okay, and then, oh, wrong way, sorry. And then this is gold. Okay, so you draw a little picture of each of the gods, the 4 of them. And this bit here is very important. Okay, the importance of religion. So religion was very important in ancient Egypt because. Okay, and you fill in the rest. All right, so that's bronze, what you need to include, silver, what you need to include, and that's gold for what you need to include. Okay, so I'll leave that on that slide there for you. Don't forget to send pictures to your teachers. Really read the information about the gods, because your next total recall might include to name a couple of those gods. And just to give you a bit of a heads up, there might be a little bit of a quiz that's coming up for topic over the next couple of weeks. So it might be an interesting idea if you just go back through your book and look at some of the information that you've gathered from total recalls and our sessions before, as a little bit of revision for you. Okay, but just remember as well, we've been looking at the religious and the cultural aspect of the ancient Egyptians here. Okay, and the fact that religion was such an important part of their daily life. All right then, I'll stop there. Have a lovely day, and I will see you again for another topic session. Bye.